Hey, welcome back to my channel, and thanks for loving to draw. Isn't the Tasmanian Devil one of your favorite cartoon characters of all time? Don't you just love his energy and emotion? Yeah, me too. Did you know that the cartoon character, the Tasmanian Devil, is actually based on a real animal that is native to the island of Tasmania? Where is Tasmania, you ask? It is an island that's about 150 miles south of the Australian mainland and is part of the country of Australia. Another fun fact, the Tasmanian devil is the largest carnivorous marsupial in the world and is classified as an endangered species. In this real-time demonstration, I'll draw the Tasmanian devil. I'll make a simplified version of him first, and then you'll see me give an additional demonstration on how to draw the details of his head. If you'd like to follow along with me, you can download a border template which is linked in the description below. In addition, you can also download the reference I'm using. The reference can be downloaded and printed, and like the border template, is linked in the description below. So, grab your pencil, your eraser, and let's draw the Tasmanian Devil, one of the most popular cartoon characters of all time. Okay, I'm set up here ready to draw a Tasmanian Devil. I've got this nice border set up, as you can see, and a reference point. Now, when I started drawing like this, the first thing I want to do is to find my line of action. Now, I think most students, when they start, they just kind of ballpark a line of action, but I like to take my time and get the line of action as accurate as I can. Alright, now this drawing actually has two lines of action, so let's work on those one at a time. Now, the first one that I notice is that it crosses right through my reference point. Well, that's a great thing to see right away. And then, if I wanted to, I could take my pencil like this, put it right on my reference point, and it looks like if I went straight across to the right until I hit my border right there, like that, then right here is where that line of action would touch. And so I'm going to put a little mark right there. So I have a mark here, right through my reference point, and another one touching my right border right there, as you can see. Okay, now my next spot. Now what I need to judge is space judgment. How far is it from this corner to the place where it touches on my top border? And if I make a judgment, I'm thinking it's about this far away. Okay, so I've got these three marks, here, here, and here. And I'm going to go ahead and connect those together. So I'm going to go ahead and start up here. I'm going to draw it downward, drawing very lightly at the beginning. You just barely see it. And I'm going to draw right towards my reference point, like that, as you can see. Now I'm going to go over that just a little bit darker, so it's nice and visible. I'm thinking something like that. Okay. Now over here, my reference point is going to bend down a little bit, and then it's going to curve up and go right to that spot that I marked, just like that. Okay, now take your time on your line of action. I think a lot of problems are caused by being in too big of a hurry right at the beginning of a drawing. So take your time as you sketch that in. Okay, so there's line of action number one. Now, line of action number two. Pretty easy. It ends up right here in the corner of my border, this lower left corner. So I'm going to put a mark right there. Okay. Also, it's going to be just a little bit to the left of my reference point. So I'm going to put a little mark right there. Okay. Now, where does it touch? Now, here's what I can do. I can take this little handout. I can put my pencil vertically, like this. Vertical on my reference point, and then what I want to do is come over to my drawing. I'm going to take this line up straight vertical like this until I hit my top border. Then I'm going to take a look at that again and judge its distance, and I think it's about maybe that far away, and I'll put another little mark there. Okay, so what I want to do then is draw my second line of action. So I'm going to go from here to here, and this line's not straight, but there's not too much of a curve into it, so right like that. And then I'm going to take this up here, bend it, and make sure that I connect something like this. Okay, now some students think I go too slow on these lines of action, but I really think if I spend the time to look at it carefully, to figure out the position of the line of action, that it really helps my drawing work out better. It saves time in the long run, and also I think I end up being a little less frustrated. Okay, there we go. Now, the next thing I want to do is his skull. Okay, so I'm going to mark some positions here. So I'm going to go about right here for the bottom of the skull. And when I say skull, I mean it's kind of that circle that I'm looking at. Okay? Now, if I want to take my pencil again like this and put it on the left side of the skull, okay, it's maybe about this far away. So I'm going to put a mark right over there. And also, I want to check the negative space. You know, how much space is there between my top border and the top of that circle? And I want to judge this really carefully. And if I really mess up on this first shape, it's going to create a problem for the rest of my drawing. So I'm thinking right in here is about where I want this to cross my line of action. And over here, I think I'll put a mark about this far away. So I have about 4 marks that are right in here that show me where to draw this circle. So I'm going to go ahead, you can notice I've sketched it in really lightly already. Well, I'm going to go ahead and take a little more careful look at that, make it just a little bit darker so you can see it. I'm judging how far away it is from my line of action. And I want to make it nice and round. Nice circle, as you can see. I'm thinking something about like this. Now, what I'm noticing about this is that the right side is a little bit smaller than the left, so that's a good sign that I'm doing pretty well so far. Okay, so I'm sketching in the head of my Tasmanian devil using a circle. Okay, next thing I want to put in his snout. Now that should be pretty easy for me. It's going to touch the bottom of my circle about here. It's going to sit on my line of action, so I'll just kind of indicate that right here. It's also going to sit on my line of action over here. Okay, so I've kind of got the bottom of that snout positioned, like that. Then I'm going to come up this line of action to a spot that I think is about this far, and that's going to be the top edge of it. Okay, then I'm just going to connect those like this, sketching in very lightly. And notice how that's a real tilted type of shape as it tilts downward, as you can see here. I'm thinking something about like that. I think that looks fairly close to what I want it to be. Okay, so there's my snout for the Tasmanian devil. Okay, next thing I want to do, I'm going to position a shoulder joint. Now, I take a look at something I've already drawn, like this, this snout here. I'm going to make a mark for how close I want it to be, about right there, okay? And I'm just going to go ahead and just guess the size of it. I'm thinking something like this. And I want this circle that I'm drawing right here to pretty much be cut in half by my line of action. Okay. Right there. Shoulder number 1. Okay, shoulder number 2. Now I have a question here. I would like to know where that shoulder is, the second shoulder, compared to his head that I already drew. Well, if I take my pencil like this and put it on the bottom of that shoulder, what I'm doing is I'm putting a mark right here on my head where my pencil is. And I'm going to take that across to the left. Okay, So that means that right here is where the bottom of his shoulder is. And this is the right spot for it compared to the head. Now, I then want to draw a circle that's the same size as this one and pretty much cut in half by my line of action. So right in here, I'm going to draw that like this. And when I'm working on a circle, if it's not totally circular and round when I first started, I rarely want to start erasing it. I just like to go over it again and again until it grows and becomes the right size and shape. So I'm thinking something about like that. All right, now the next shape I want to put on is relatively challenging. So what I want to do is I just want to work on it kind of one piece of it at a time. Okay, so this shape is the main shape, one of the main shapes for his face, and it's going to start right here on the snout. So I'm going to put a mark right here. I'm also going to put a mark right under his shoulder right here. Now I want to go nice and slow on that, so I'm just going to connect those two marks right away so I can kind of see where that is, getting the top of this shape. And I'm thinking about like this. I'll just sketch that in, and I'll leave that alone for a moment. Okay, then working on the other side, I can see that that line is going to cross his shoulder. It's going to be pushed a little more over to the right. So I'm going to put a mark right there. Okay, again I'm going to start it on his snout, inside his skull right here. I'm just going to draw over, downward as you can see. And I'll put that, about like that, as you can see. I think that looks relatively close. All right, now the next thing I want to look for is if I take a look at my handout, I want to look for the bottom of the shape, which is right there. And what I need to do is I need to judge my negative space from this bottom border to the bottom of that shape there. So I'm thinking of a distance that's probably something about like this. And I'm going to go ahead and put a mark across my paper for negative space. Now remember, the definition of negative space is a space or shape surrounding an object. Okay, now what about the side of it? Well, if I take my pencil and use my pencil again, and if I put my pencil like this, basically straight up and down, what I'm judging is how close that shape is to my shoulder that I've already drawn. It's about this far away. So I'm going to take this mark right here, and I'm going to bring it downward, down my page vertically, really light like this. Okay, so that gives me a really good idea of how big that shape is. Okay, let's go ahead and sketch that in. So I'm going to sketch it in, bringing it over here and touching that mark that I made. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and bring that down. I'm going to curve it. I'm going to stop about right there. Okay, then back to the second shoulder, I'm going to come this way. Drawing slanted, putting in a little bit of a curve, coming down, and hitting my mark about right there. Okay, now I'm going to take a look at that shape a little more carefully. I'm going to draw over it a little bit darker so you can see it a little bit better. But that's a very important shape, and I want to take a real careful look at it. Okay, and I'll just draw over this a little bit darker. Now remember, when you're drawing your simple shapes, one of your goals should be to draw as light as you possibly can. And sometimes I kind of break that rule when I'm doing a demonstration like this here, because I need you to kind of be able to see where it is. All right, now from here, I'm going to go ahead and draw in his mouth, and I'm going to put some locations for myself. It's going to touch his skull about right here, so I'll put a little mark there. It's going to touch his snout about right here. I'll put a mark right there. Okay. How far away is it from the bottom of this shape? Oh, maybe something like this. And I will put a mark here. And then it's going to extend outside of his body, maybe about this far. So I'll put a mark right there. So I like to know how big I'm going to draw something instead of kind of guessing along the way. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and sketch in this shape like this. I'm going to draw over, getting fairly close to my previous shape, like this. I'm going to start to turn it, and I'm going to run into my mark right there, and I'll stop there for a moment. Just going over that again. Okay, now down here at the bottom, it's not quite straight across. There's a little bit of a curve into it, so I want to get that curve. It curves upward just a little bit like this. Not very much. Coming out here, and then I'm going outside my shape, and I'll stop there for a moment. Okay, then I'll go back here. I'm going to slant down like this, roughly parallel to my line of action. I'm going to change direction, go downward, keep it curvy, and put it right there so that shape goes outside my previous one. Okay, and I'm feeling pretty good about that. Alright, I'm ready to work on some legs. Now, these legs have some stick figure construction, which I think is useful for a cartoon character. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to draw like the bone, which is in the middle of the shape. So I'm going to draw like this, here at the bottom. Then I'm going to extend it outside my shape. Oh, maybe about that far. And I think about right here I'm going to stop. I'll put a little mark there. Going back to the other side, I'm going to continue. I'm going to extend outside the shape, maybe about that far, and I'll put a mark there. Okay, now when I draw this knee right here, it's a circle. It's a little smaller than its shoulder, and it's pretty much cut in half by my line of action. So if I'm going to sketch it in like this, I'll just draw it really light at first. If it's not the right size, I won't erase, I'll just keep going over it till it's about something like that. I think that looks about right. Okay, now I want to draw the two knees at the same size. So when I draw this one over here, which I've already checked its position, I want to draw it about the same size. So I'll draw it in, I'm thinking something about like that. Now when I compare those two shapes together, I think that's about right. Now, did you notice that one knee is a little lower than the other one? And if you're noticing that, that's a good sign. Okay, let's do some connecting. I'm going to connect from the bottom of this knee up to this body shape, about like that. I'll just continue over and connect down to the bottom of this knee, like that. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and draw upward for the top of that thigh, and I'll draw this up here like this. I'm thinking something about like that. I think that looks pretty close to where I need to be. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and connect this way too. Now this one's a little different. It's going to come up and see, I'm going to go ahead and connect it to a shoulder about right there, so I know where I'm going. So here's how I do that. I'm going to draw upwards. I'm going to get very close to my previous shape. Move a little bit away from it. And I'm going to go up, keep on curving, and connect to my mark, as you can see. Okay. And I think that's looking pretty good. Now, while I'm at it, I think I'll finish up here. I'm going to go to the shoulder and just draw from the side of the shoulder downward until I hit the skull. And I'm thinking about right there. That looks pretty good. Okay, now I think this is coming together for me pretty well. Alright, the next thing I want to do is I want to draw in an ankle and a little bit of a leg bone. So I'm going to go about right here and draw this very short leg bone and a very small circle like this for his ankle. I think that's about right. Okay, negative space. I'm going to let my negative space help me position this foot. So I want this foot to be about this far from my left border. So I'm going to put a mark there. And then I want it to be about this far away from my bottom border, and I'll put a mark right there. Okay. Now I think that looks pretty good. Now sometimes I like to do something that's maybe not on that handout, and what I want to do is I kind of want to draw like a stick figure for the foot, a stick figure bone for the foot, and I'm going to draw this down in here into this corner like that, and that just kind of gives me something to kind of follow. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and draw this then. Okay, like this. You see how that toe is going to go above your line of action just a little bit. So there's the top of my foot like that. Here's the bottom of my foot touching my mark for good negative space. And I'll come up and connect in to the ankle. Okay. Sometimes I like to find an oval in a shape like that, and that kind of gives me a nice shape for this foot. Okay, and I think that looks pretty good. Okay, now do you notice how this lower leg bone is a little longer than our first one? So I'm going to go ahead and draw that over just a little further, a little longer than our first one, maybe about that far. And I want to draw again a small ankle, about the same size as this one. So I'll put this in. I'm thinking something about like that. Now, if you notice that this second ankle is a little higher on the page than the first one, you're doing pretty well. Okay, let's work on this foot then. Now, what I want to do, I'll show you a couple ways that I figure this out. For negative space, I want the bottom of this foot to be about this far from my border. So I put a mark there. Okay. Now, one of the keys to drawing is to compare what you're drawing with something you already drew. So in this case, I'm going to show you this little trick again. I'm going to take this pencil here and put it vertically on the end of this toe like this. It looks like the toe lines up with the shoulder. Okay, so what I do then is I'm going to go right to the shoulder. Looks like it lines up pretty much right with the edge of it, and I'm going to bring it down with a vertical line. And this tells me exactly how big I need to be with that foot. So that means if I don't put my foot right here in this corner, I'm having a problem. Okay, so I'm going to draw that in. Here's the top of my foot. Look how close it is to the knee. Okay. Come over here, bend it down. I'll put it right there in that corner. Okay, bottom of the foot going kind of straight across, beginning to bend down, and I put it right on my mark for negative space. Find that oval once again, and I'll sketch that in. That's a great piece of advice. Compare something you're drawing with something you already drew on your piece of paper to see if the relationship between the two parts is correct. So I think the relationship between the toe and the shoulder is now correct. That's a good sign. Okay, let's move on. Now, I'm going to go ahead, the next thing I want to do is I want to put in a wrist. So I'm going to be right under my border with a very small negative space, and I'm going to draw a circle that's a little bit smaller than the shoulder. Once again, I'm going to keep this centered on that line of action. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and connect the shoulder to the wrist. And basically, that's just a line like this that's parallel, roughly parallel to that line of action. Okay. And I'll draw it like this as well. Putting a little curve into it, coming up and connecting. Okay. Now, a common mistake that students make is they draw the hands too small. But I just commented on a method that I like to use, which is to compare something I'm drawing with something I already drew. Well, if I take a look here, here's what I'm noticing. If I put my pencil like this, straight across on the bottom of the hand, it lines up with the top edge of his snout. So if I do this, if I take the top edge of my snout right here, and if I take that straight across to the left with a light sketch, this will tell me exactly how far down the hand should be, so I don't have to guess. Okay, check my negative space. I want the hand shape to be about this close to my border, so I'll put a mark right there. And at its closest point, I want that hand shape to be about this close to the body. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and draw that then. So I'm going to slightly sketch down from this wrist, this long shape, making sure it touches the marks that I've made, like that. And then I'll bring that up, a bit of a curve to it, and I'm going to connect it right to his wrist, about like that. I think students struggle with drawing a lot because they don't actually see the relationship between the shapes. But see, I checked that. I compared the bottom of the hand with something I already drew. I saw that it lined up conveniently with the top of the snout. So if I put that hand shape straight across, that means I'm having a good relationship right there between those two shapes. Okay, now the next thing I want you to notice is I'm going to draw this thumb. Now what I notice is that the bottom of the thumb is a little lower than the top of this shoulder. So I'm going to put a little mark about right there for the bottom of his thumb. So that means if I don't draw the thumb, the bottom of the thumb right here, I'm confused. The thumb will not be correct compared to the shoulder. And that's what drawing is. It's learning how to see the relationship between sizes, spaces, and shapes. Okay, so I'm going to draw that thumb this close to that shoulder. I'm just going to sketch in this thumb like this. Here will be the other side. I'll just leave that there for a moment. Okay, then I'm going to come down off the wrist. I'm going to drop down, come across a little bit. I'll bump up a little bit, and that will give me the top edge of my thumb. Okay, then right here, I think, the hand shape is going to cross about right there. And I'll draw that as a curve right over there about like that. I think that thumb might be just a little bit thin. I'm going to adjust it just a little bit right there. Okay, let's move on. And, try not to get tired near the end of your simple shapes. You want to be as accurate as you can, even at the end. Now I'm going to take a look at this line of action again. I'm just going to darken it in a little because I'm going to be referring to it like that. Okay, I want to locate his wrist. So I check my negative space. How close is that wrist to my border? I think it's about that far away. And of course, it's a little smaller than his shoulder. So if I make an estimate of about like that, that's about the right width for it. Okay, now do you notice how there's a little more of it above the line of action and a little less below? So when you draw your circle, you want to push it up just a little bit like that. Okay, good. Now, that is a very unusual hand shape, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do to position that. Okay, first of all, it's going to be really close to my border somewhere here. So I'm going to make a mark for negative space. Okay? Now, if I would like to use my pencil method again, I can go like this. I can put my pencil straight across horizontal on the bottom of the hand, and it looks like that it lines up with the top of the foot, not the top of the toe, but the top of the foot. So the top of my foot's about right here. So if I bring that over to the right, it's about like that. Okay. Then I can ask myself this question. How much negative space is there between this toe and the edge of that shape there? And if I go ahead and mark that, maybe something about like this, that's going to help me be accurate there. Okay, let's go ahead and sketch in that very unusual shape. I'll start here from the wrist. I'll go downward, out to the right. I'm going to hit my mark there. I'm going to bend it downward, hitting my mark here, hitting my mark right there. I'll stop for a moment. I'm going to come up here. I'm going to sketch it in downward like this. I'm going to bend it, and I'm thinking it's a shape that's something about like that. Okay, it's an unusual shape, but this Tasmanian devil has some very large hands, and we don't want him to look weird with hands that are too small. Okay, one more thing, let's do a thumb. Now I've got a lot of things I can refer to help me draw this thumb, and I'll just tell you what they are. I'll start at the top of my wrist. I'm going to draw downward. I'm going to get very close to my line of action. I'm going to break away from it just a little bit, and I'm going to put just a little sliver of the thumb inside that shoulder. Okay, and then I'll bring it down, and I'll leave it there for a moment. Go back to the hand shape. I'm going to draw upwards towards my line of action, and I'm going to draw downwards, keeping the thumb rounded there at the bottom. Okay, so there we have a Tasmanian devil. It fills up our space nicely. It's got some nice angle to it, and it's all set up, ready for some details. Once again, I often consider that the most difficult part of the drawing is getting started. And once I get these simple shapes in position, they tell me where things are, then drawing can be a fun process that works out nicely. Okay, so what I have here is this drawing, simplified version of the Tasmanian devil, and I drew it with this blue animator pencil. Then I took my kneaded eraser and I rubbed it on top of it to make it as light as possible. So you can just barely see these simplified shapes, and I'm going to start detailing this Tasmanian devil. Now, where I want to start is I want to start with his nose. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to notice how close the nose is to his muzzle at the bottom, and I'm going to go ahead and put a mark there. Because as you know, when I draw, I like to know how big something is before I actually draw it. Okay, and then the nose, it's probably something about right here. And on this side, it's probably something about right here. So what I want to do then is draw this oval in this general area. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'm going to draw once again with this blue animator pencil. I'm just going to sketch the basic shape of his nose. Now, at this point, I'm still making a sketch, which means my lines are not my permanent lines. I don't want to go over them. I don't want them to be too dark. I just want to get the general area of some of these detailed shapes. Okay, his highlight, I'm going to go ahead and sketch that in as well. And I'm noticing it's pushed over a little bit to the right side. So I'm going to go ahead and draw this once again as an oval. And I'll just sketch it in something like this. Now, I notice I've got to shade that, but that's not something I want to worry about at this point. I'm still just trying to find all the general shapes of the details without putting in any type of a finalized line. Okay, so there's the nose of my Tasmanian devil. Okay, next thing I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and sketch in the muzzle. Now I've got this basic simplified shape for the muzzle, so I know basically where it is, but what I'm going to do is just draw over that and finalize it just a little bit. So I'm going to notice that the bottom of it's going to come up like this, and I want to see how close that wrinkle is going to get to my nose. I'm thinking something like that, so about that close. And then for the other side, I'm just going to go ahead and continue that around. Following my simplified shape, I think is pretty good. I'm just going to draw that in and attach that to the top of the nose. So I'll sketch that in like this. Now I can see that it's going to be separated, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. Okay, so there's one side of my muzzle, and the other one I'm going to do basically the same thing. I'm just going to draw this in just a little bit darker, using my simplified shape as a guide, which I thought already was pretty good. And I'll sketch this in with a nice smooth curve, curving around and giving me the shape of his muzzle. And I'll go something like this here. Now you're going to notice that when I draw, I'm always going to rotate my paper so that I'm drawing in the easiest direction. So sometimes that's going to be sideways or upside down or right side up. Okay, so there's the muzzle of the Tasmanian devil. Now the next thing I want to do is I'm going to draw in a shape for the teeth. And so I'm going to notice that over here the edge of that tooth is going to be about like this. And then over here I'm going to notice it's going to be about right here. And I'll sketch that in like that. And what I want to notice is that these teeth are slanted. And I'm going to go ahead and draw just this basic shape here. So I'm kind of connecting the bottom of those two teeth. And it's going to be a shape something like this. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in. Now when I draw these teeth, what I want to notice is how many there are and where they go. So I'm going to go ahead and start with this one over here, and I want to notice that the tip of the tooth is a little bit rounded. So I'll sketch it in like this, and I want to notice how thick it is, and I want to make sure that I'm getting the proper angle of the tooth, which I see is a little bit of a problem right there. So I want to get this type of angle here coming up like that. I can tell I need to adjust that just a little bit. And I'm always going to say, you know, whenever you draw, you can't ever be afraid to get out your eraser and fix any type of mistake. You know, it's way worse to continue with the mistake. So I'm going to adjust this tooth. You know, I drew it, I looked at it, I wasn't super happy with it, so I'm going to make that adjustment. And what I'm thinking is that the tooth was too skinny. So I'm thinking more of a spot, more like this here. And I'm going to bring that up, something like that. Okay, so I'm a little happier with that tooth, as you can see. I'm going to touch that up with my eraser just a little bit. Again, I'm drawing with this blue pencil, no final lines yet. I'm still just working on my sketch. Okay, so over here, let's do this other tooth, this other large tooth. I'm going to come down, and then I'm going to see how wide I want that to be. Something about like that. Okay, so I'll sketch that in, noticing that the tooth is a little bit rounded at the tip. Okay, feeling good about that. Now those two other teeth are just basic triangles, but what I want to do is just notice where they touch compared to the muzzle. So I want to be about right here with this tooth. I'm going to go ahead and put that in. And then this other one, I want to be about right here. And it pretty much connects with that longer tooth right there at the base. Okay, so I'm thinking like that for the shape of the teeth for the Tasmanian devil. Okay, excellent. Now, while I'm working here with this muzzle area, I'm going to go ahead and make an adjustment here at the top. So I'm going to draw the top of the muzzle, and then I'm going to get out my eraser, and I'm going to separate that muzzle line so it's something like that right there, and I'm going to separate it something like that right there. Okay, now what I want to do is I'm going to make an adjustment to these details, and I'm going to go ahead and draw the top of the mouth curving upwards, oh, maybe about that far. Okay, and then over here I'm going to draw the top of this facial shape. That's going to be about right here, and I'm going to sketch that in. Now it's going to be pretty close to my simplified shape, and so I'm just going to go ahead and draw over that. And at this point on this entire demonstration, I'm not really going to worry about the tufts of hair. Those are details that I want to save for later. But right now I just want to work on the muzzle, getting these shapes as accurate as I can. Okay. Over here, while I'm working, I'm going to go ahead and separate the two muzzle lines as well. I'll do something about right there, like that. And there I've got the shape of the nose and the muzzle for the Tasmanian devil. Okay, now looking at the mouth for a moment. So what I want to notice is I think my simplified shape is really in just the right spot. So that's where that mouth is going to touch, just right there, and it's going to follow that simplified shape. Okay, now this can be a little bit confusing. So what I want to do is I'm going to draw, using this tooth as a measuring spot, I'm going to draw downward like that. And then this line is going to help me to connect with that tooth. So I want to put that in about right there. Okay, now that I've got that located, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put in this lip, which I want that to be, you know, my simple shape is telling me just where I need to be on that. I'm going to go ahead and draw this in like this. And I'm going to use my simplified shape. I hardly need to make any changes to it. It's going to come around. I see this curve. That looks good. And it's going to come up. And I'm going to draw this in about right to that point right there. Okay, so again, my simplified shape really helping me out. Okay, and while I'm at it, I'm just going to go ahead and finish off this bottom portion of his face. So I'm going to take a look. Here's the lip. It's going to come into about right here. And then I'm just going to basically follow this simplified shape downward and up, curving up, getting close to the mouth. And again, at this point, I'm going to ignore the tufts of hair. I just want to take a look at this, draw this upward, and connect smoothly. Once again, just adjusting my simplified shape. Alright, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. That looks great. Okay, now what I need to do next is I'm going to draw the top of the lip. So I don't really have a simplified shape for that, so I'm going to estimate it about right here. And I'm going to sketch it in. And I'm going to draw like this. It's going to come up, it's going to be over, and what I'm noticing is that I need to connect to this mouth opening, so it's going to be something like this. And I'm going to barely just graze my pencil on that line. You can see me developing that. Okay, now I'm going to rotate my paper to make this line a little bit easier for me to draw. I want a nice smooth curve like this. I'm just going to bring that upwards, smoothly curving, ignoring the tongue at the moment, and I'm just going to connect that in to the corner of the mouth, just like that. Okay, then while I'm here, I'm going to take my eraser. If I have any of this simplified shape left over, I'm going to get rid of it right there, like that. Okay, very good. Now, let's take a look at the bottom teeth. So what I want to do over here is estimate where that bottom tooth is going to be. And I'm thinking like right here for one edge. And then you'll notice that tooth is just going to come up and be right here like that. And again, I'm just going to draw this basic shape like this. For those teeth. Okay, so I need those teeth to fill it up, and I need to make sure that this tooth over here on the left is higher than this one over here on the right. Okay, so I'm going to sketch those in just really light and see what I've got. Got a nice curve right here. I'll bring this tooth down. I want it to be about that wide. I want to work on both sides at the same time, so over here I'll curve this one down, and I want that to be about right here. Okay, this tooth significantly shorter, rounded, maybe something about like that. And then this tooth here coming up, kind of connecting to that larger tooth, maybe at this point right there. Okay, like those teeth, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to get rid of this connecting line between them, but that line was helpful to show me that the teeth are not straight across from each other. Okay, so that's looking good. Now, the tongue of my Tasmanian devil. So what I want to do when I draw this tongue is I want to check and see how far away it is from the corner of the mouth. So I'm thinking about right there. How close is it to this tooth? I'm thinking this close. And how close to this tooth? Very close. Okay. And then over here I'm going to see that the tongue is going to extend outside this shape I have, because there's another part of his body here that I'm not drawing. But that's probably somewhere over here, you know, maybe in this general area. So you can kind of see the area that I have for the tongue. Okay, now I'm going to draw that right now as one single shape without all the final details. So I'm going to sketch in like this, come down here, hit my mark. Okay, I'm going to notice that the tongue is going to be curving upwards, somewhere hitting this line, somewhere over there. Nice smooth curve there. Okay, then I'm going to come down this mouth line to a spot. It's about right there. And this line is going to mostly curve upwards. So somewhere over here. And you can see I have the shape for the tongue. Now, I've just drawn the space for it, but I need to make some adjustments to it. So I'm going to draw over here, get this line curving up. And you can see this is kind of the tip of the tongue. Right in there. And then it's going to curve downward. I'm thinking something about like that for the tip of the tongue. Okay, so you can see me just draw right through. Alright, let's make an adjustment with my eraser. And while I'm here with my eraser, I'm going to go ahead and erase these parts that are covered up by the tongue, like this. Okay, so now it's time to make an adjustment to the detail. So I'm going to come down here, I'm going to get this curve, and I'm going to have this curve inward to a spot about right there. And I want that to be nice and curving, like that. Then I'll come down this curve to a spot about right there, and I'll get this something like this here. Okay, so I'm just going to adjust that about right there. Drawing over that a little bit darker, a little more definite. Okay, and then with my eraser, I'm going to adjust these sketch lines like this. Okay, as you can see, I've got the tongue of the Tasmanian devil. Okay, so I think I mentioned that I'm not going to worry about tufts of hair at this point, just to get the shape. And then over here, I'm going to do the same thing. This simple shape is really good. And so I'll just bring this down just a little bit, and I want to adjust. I'll bring it a little bit higher. And I'll come down, just following my simplified shape, coming down like this. You'll notice I can draw right through my lip, get that connected. That's called the drawing through technique. I'll adjust this nice curve at the bottom just a little bit. Got a nice curve for the shape of the Tasmanian devil. Okay, a little bit of cleanup with my eraser like this. And then I'll get rid of this line, which is of course behind the lip. And there we go. Clean up a little construction over here. Right, feeling pretty good about the Tasmanian devil. Okay, now the next thing I want to focus on are the eyes of my Tasmanian devil. Now the eyes are known as the windows to the soul, so you want to be really careful about those. And I'm going to put in some positions so I can see. And I want to draw the white shape first. So I'm going to see that that's going to start right there. Okay? And then I'm going to see that that eye shape is going to end right there. Okay, so right away I know how wide the eye is going to be at the base because I've marked these positions. Maybe just a little more that way. I've marked the positions so I know its width. Okay, so then I'm going to lightly sketch in what I think is the shape of the eye. So I'm going to come with this curve like this. I'll draw this a little bit longer than I need it to be. I want to get this kind of curving outward right there. And then I'll just get this curving upward. I'm thinking about there. And maybe I want to increase, just change this just a little bit right there. Okay, so that's what I think the shape of the white of the eye is on that one right there. Okay, now I'm not going to worry for a moment about the eyebrows, just the white shape of the eye. Okay, now what I want to do is I'm going to draw the other eye next, and I'm going to put in once again some locating lines. So that eye is going to need to touch about right there, and it's going to need to start about right here. Okay, so this eye, I'm going to sketch in this curving upwards line. It's got a nice curve, and again I'm going to draw that longer than I need it. Something like that. And then here I'm going to get this curve, and it's going to curve to the right. It's going to come over like that. Okay, now if you take a look at the shape of those eyes, feeling pretty good about that. I'm going to take a look at this curve one more time. Maybe just a little bit more this way. Maybe right there. Okay, and this one here, I'll bring that over to the point. Okay, little cleanup, and there I have the shape of the whites of the eyes. Okay, Not going to worry about those details, not quite yet. Okay, now the eyebrows. So what I want to do, eyebrows, the dark part of the eye, so let's get that. Now notice down here it touches the shape of his head, and then as it comes up it's going to get a little bit skinnier. So I'll come up like this. I'll draw that a little longer than I need it to be, right there. Okay. And then I'm going to extend outward and curve it down just a little bit right there. Okay, that looks good. You're noticing how it's skinny here, gets a little bit wider, and then it's going to come up to a point about right there, and then I'm going to bring that down like that. And I've got the shape of the eyebrow. Now I need to fill that in with some shading, but that's something I'm going to wait. I'm not going to waste time doing that right now. I'll just put that in like that, and I've got that nice shape for the eyebrow. Okay. Now over on this side, I'm going to notice that it's a little bit thicker here. So I'll put a mark there, and then as I draw this curve upwards, I want it to become closer and skinnier right here like that, as you can see. Okay, and I'm feeling good about that. Okay, now this one, very thin here at the bottom, and then it gets quite thick here near the middle and towards the top, coming up, and I'll then curve that about like that, and this will just come up and be something about right there. I'm going to adjust it now, make it nice and pointy, and adjust the shape of that eyebrow like that. Okay, feeling really good about that. Let's get some touch up there. I've got the shape of the eyebrows. The next thing I want to work on are the ears of the Tasmanian devil. So I'm going to work over here on the right side, and I'm going to use this eye shape here, come across this head shape, and I'm going to put a mark right here where I want the inside of the ear to start. And I think it's about this wide, and I'm just going to sketch in. I want to make sure this oval is kind of tilting this direction here, and I'll sketch in this oval here. This will be the inside of the ear, right there. Okay, outside of the ear, coming up, and kind of following this line around, and this will end up somewhere about right there. Okay, and I think that looks about right. Comparing how close it is to the eye, feeling good about it. Alright, moving to the other ear. Now again, I want to check the distance from the eye to the ear, and I think it's about right there, and I think this ear is about this wide. So I'm going to draw this shape coming up like this. I'm thinking something right in here for the shape of the inside of the ear, like that. Okay, well, let's do the outside of the ear. So coming up the side, then it's going to come up, drawing this nice and light in case I've got it wrong. Come up to where the top of the ear is. Come down. The line is going to be pretty close to the inside of the ear. And I want to come down about this far. Okay, I think that's about right. And I'll just go over those just a little bit more. Okay. Now, the last thing I want to work on in this demonstration is the basic shape of the hair at the top. And what I want to do is keep it really simple first, and then I'll make it more complicated. And I'm going to draw by comparison. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the parts of the Tasmanian devil that I've already drawn to position parts of the hair. Okay, so the first one I'm going to work on is right here by this eye. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to sketch in a simplified shape, kind of this curving up line about that far, and that's going to come down and attach to the ear. Now I can see that there are tufts of hair that I need to draw, but at this moment I'm not going to worry about that. I'm trying to get the big shape first. Okay, good. Then I'm going to move over here, and I'm going to look at this eyebrow, and about this far away from this eyebrow I'm going to start drawing this shape. And I can see this is going to come up, it's going to be going up, curving just a little bit, maybe about that high. And I like the position of this line compared to this eyebrow. So I think that's about right, something like that. And then I'm just going to bring that down and connect it to the ear about right there. Again, I'm ignoring the tufts of hair, so I'm just going to draw a simplified version of it like this. And I can adjust it and make the tufts of the hair in a moment. Okay, so there I have it, like that. Okay, now as it gets over here to the middle, it can get difficult. So what I want to do is I'm going to come here to the eyebrow. I'm going to put in a little line that you can see about right there, like that. Maybe that far. Okay, and then that line is going to end something like that. Okay, so all I want to do is just sketch really lightly. I'll have this come up. I'm going to curve it. I'm going to bring it. It's kind of like a U shape like this. And I'll bring this up to a spot about right here. And what I want to look for right now is the distance between this hair point and this one. And I think that is about right. And I've got this simplified U shape right there. Okay, and then basically I want to come down and kind of connect over here like this. So I'll just sketch this in really light. It's going to come down like this, right there. Okay, so those three shapes are the basic shapes for the Tasmanian devil's hair. And then what I want to do is add the details and make these a little more complicated. So I think the first one to work on is right here, and I want to get this shape curving up and then in like that. And I think that's a great thing to always do. Draw it simple first and then make it more complicated. So I now have the major shapes of the hair. So now what I want to do is I want to complicate those shapes just a little bit, but I've basically got those in and I can use them as a guide. Okay, so I'll start up here with this ear. I'm going to draw this tuft of hair up, and then I'll have it come downward like that, and then it's going to be like this coming up to the point. So you can see I use my basic shape to get started, and then I'll just clean that up a little bit so it's a little more clear, like this with my eraser, like that. Making it simple first, then making it more complicated. Alright, continuing to the right, I'll continue down into the shape and I see a tuft that's going to come up like this and down like that, and then I'll just wrap around up into the point that I already drew like that. Okay, touch that up just a little bit, Okay, that's looking great. Okay, so then I'm going to continue downward with this triangular shape, and I'll bring this down to a spot about right there. Okay, so that gives me the next major tuft of hair. I'll just bring that just a little more like that. Okay, then right here I need to come up, go out just a little bit, bring it down, bring it in just a little bit. Like that. Okay, grab my eraser, touch this up as well. There we go. Okay, continuing. Now this shape will go out to the point that I made. It's going to come in about like that. And then I'll make this tuft right here, and it'll come in basically like this. I'm going to get this curving up just a little bit like that. Okay, touch that up with my eraser right there. There you go. This one looks good right here. Okay, and then just to finish this off, I'll just come like this, come downward, and one more tuft of hair about like that. Grab my eraser and touch it up. Okay, as you can see, I've got the hair tufts of the Tasmanian devil all ready to go. Drew them simple first, then made them a little more complicated. The next thing I want to do is just wrap up a few of these minor finishing up details, like this little wrinkle between the eyes, which I'll put in right there. And then finally, I want to put in the pupils of the eyes, just these little ovals right here. I don't want them to be too big, of course. Maybe just like that. There we go. Then over here I'm just checking to see how close that is to the edge. And I'm thinking something like this. That looks about right to me. Okay, so as you can see here, I have drawn in all the details of the Tasmanian devil's face, except for just a few other tufts of hair, which I want to work on next. So I'm going to work here, and I'm just going to compare things. I'm going to draw this one here past the ear just a little bit, maybe about that far. So there's a tuft of hair right there. I'll come down here this direction. They'll put one in about right there, like that. And then we'll continue downward. I want to notice how close it is to the tongue, maybe about right there. That looks about right. About like that. Okay, with my eraser I'll just touch up a couple things there. Okay, that looks good. Just want to make sure that line continues through to a nice connection right there. Okay, over here let's put on a couple other tufts of hair. This one here is going to go and it's going to touch, just about touch the edge of the ear. So about right there. And we'll have this one come down. I want to keep that curve going. I'm going to bring it down about right here. like that. Continuing, we'll bring this one down to a spot about right there, and then last one right here. That looks about right. Continuing through. Okay, that looks good. And there we have the details of the Tasmanian devil. Now, one of the things I like to do at this point of my drawing, as you can see, I've been working the entire time with this blue animator pencil right here. And what I like to do is I like to take my kneaded eraser, this kneaded eraser right here, and what I like to do is I like to squish it between my fingers so it gets a little bit thinner, kind of like a worm, maybe something about like this. And then what I like to do is I like to take it like this, and I like to rub it on top of my drawing, as you can see here. And what I'm trying to do is make my entire drawing lighter, like this, just getting it lighter. And as I do that, it lifts off some of the blue pencil, but of course not all of it. And I'm going to reform this. It kind of cleans itself as we go. And like I said, it makes your drawing, you can sometimes rub it like this too. It makes your drawing all light, like this. Okay, and then what I like to do is when I have this drawing super light, this is called ghosting the image, like that. So everything's light, you can just barely see it now. What I like to do then is I like to switch over to my mechanical pencil, and basically all I want to do is trace over the best of my sketch lines. And this is where I can really work hard on my line quality. So I'll just give you a brief demonstration. So all I'm doing now here is tracing over the best blue line that I drew with a super clean graphite line, like that. And once again, I just locate the best blue line and I trace over it like that. That gives me the great line quality that I like to look for. I'm just going to do a couple other lines with you to kind of show you. Just go over the best line, nice and smooth. So this line never needs to be sketchy. It can be confident, it can be smooth, because I'm not really worried about where I need to draw it, because I'm just tracing over the best line that I have. I'll just do a couple other lines with you, as you can see here. Just tracing over the best ones. It gets the line super. The line quality is nice and smooth. It's confident, like that. And there you can see the process of detailing the Tasmanian devil.